I'm so excited to introduce Moira this afternoon, and mostly because she's great, but also because she's a friend of ours that we've known for so long, and clearly she has many friends. Look at all these people. So Moira is especially part of our poetry world recently, because we got to hang out with her in Rome when we were there this summer, and that was really exciting and inspiring. So thank you so much for being here. So Moira is the author of Amore e Morte, and her 10th poetry collection, The Furies, is forthcoming from LSU Press next year. Her work appears in numerous anthologies, most recently Best Spiritual Literature, Divining Dante, and Poems of Rome, which I can't recommend enough. That's a great collection. In 2023, Egan won the Rises to Palki Translation Fellowship of the Academy of American Poets for her translations of the poetry of Giorgia Maria Cornello. Egan was a finalist for the 2024 Erskine J. Poetry Prize, and her work appears in the new issue of Smartish Pace. She's a graduate of the writing seminars at Hopkins, and she lives in Rome. Welcome. Thank you so much.
I'm nervous. Thank you all. Thank you all for being here. Oh my God, so many people from so many different parts of my life, and it's just a great joy and honor to see you all. And thank you, David, and thank you, Stefan, and thank you, Claire, and thank you, Brid and Hand, and Emma in absentia, I guess. Yes. Wow. So, I'm going to read some poems. And to explain, this book, Amore e Morte, which is very originally, as you probably know, Love and Death, is kind of a bilingual new and selected poems. And the new are poems that will be in The Furies, which is coming out next year, I am happy to say. And yeah, that's what I'll say. I'm about to read a sonnet crown. The poets in the room don't need the explanation, but perhaps the non-poets in the room would appreciate to know that this one is a mini crown of 7 poems. So it starts with a line and the first poem, and then the last line of the first poem becomes the first line of the next poem, and it's called a crown because it wraps around, and the last line of the sequence is the first line of the sequence. I was teaching Emily Wilson's translation of the Odyssey a few years ago, the first woman to translate the Odyssey into English, and I think it's a pretty good translation, and I think she gets a kind of feminine slant on it in ways that hadn't really happened before, but I think that the women characters still have a little bit of fury to express, and so this is the sonnet crown called Group Therapy for the Female Characters of the Odyssey. Yes, please laugh. Trigger warnings, they are all furious. Charybdis has an eating disorder, and I guess those are the main trigger warnings I need to give you. So, Penelope. I tell them, though they never get it right, I stood beside that pillar my full height. Athena wrought Pylades. It was me. My strength and cunning was the husbandry that kept our house erect. I used my looks, I mean both glances, veiled, and my hook, my beauty, if a little wrinkled now. But still they wanted me. I was their sow, domestic, they the rustic, rutting boors. The very root of hybrid, it would seem, the root also of hubris. Seamen, seam, the men are praised for coming back from wars. I held our house together, son unharmed, and I will be remembered for my charms. Siren. I sing a song dismembering, a charm both dangerous and diligent, more harm than good, my reputation, but my song, a dark and smoky brew, lapsang tsuchong. I softly croon and whisper, sex, a breath of elemi that sounds and smells like death. You've tied your stubborn captain to the mast. You turn away, you warm the wax, avast. What if I said I only want your ear, your full attention, turned toward me, erect? If you could just oblige, I wouldn't wreck your ship, your self-esteem, your plans. To hear, it's not the same. If you can't learn to listen, your bird-pecked skeleton and skull will listen. Circe. You, peckish skin and bones, I'll have you glistening sweat and pheromones. Come closer, listen. My island welcomes you a second home, by which I mean you'll never be alone, by which, you call me bitch, I see through you, your pains, your muscles strained, your psyche bruised. I offer wine and honey, sex and food. You men, you grab my girls, you're rough and rude, and you have no idea. I know what glisters is all too often not a precious metal, not silver, gold. I opt then not to settle. I'll put you on the spit and watch you blister, your incense, fragrant, meaty smoke. You swine, you always knew you'd turn out to be mine. Please feel free to laugh. I mean, it's grim, but it's supposed to be funny too. Scylla. I'd always hoped you'd turn out to be mine. You powerful, you handsome, you so fine. Whoever you were, politician, god. To your high pinnacle, I'm just the sod. Whatever tale you tell, I'm now the beast. The once a beauty, now the thing with teeth. Picasso monster, vagina dentata. So what about you with your armada of lawyers, lovers tricked into collusion? You treat me as the lesser of two evils. You really want to go all medieval? Oops, sorry. You really want me to go all medieval on your fine ass like some foregone conclusion? You mess with me, it's all going to go south. And Mr. Master, better watch my mouth. Charybdis. The mist, the masticated, watch my mouth. I suck it in, I retch, I spit it out. They worry when they scuttle through my straits. I worry terribly about my weight. I taste, I chew, I swallow, then I purge. It's violent, it's swirly, it's my urge. There's nothing tastes as good as being thin. And so I let you at me sink and swim. Oh, long ago, they said, a pretty face. Control the water scrolls, the basin holds what they extol. At least you have that, darling, coup de grace. The goddess beauty scratches at my soul. I'll heave you, believe me, from pole to pole. Nausicaa. I heaved him from the beach. I had to pull him in, exhausted, thirsty, sun-mad, full of sea salt and nostalgia. When he woke, he said some words, a name, and then he choked his tears back. I could see it was a game, no, more a strategy, a way to claim his presence with me. Then he took my hand and looked into my eyes. I swear no man has ever looked so deeply in me since. He had no clothes. I gave him mine to wear. I rubbed his skin with oil. I combed his hair. He smelled of, I'm messing up my pronouns here. He smelled of sun-baked juniper and incense. We laughed and talked. He said he missed his home. He wished for me I'd never be alone. Euryclea. Some days I wished I'd had a different home. It hurt my heart when every night she'd moan, no way to know. She's crying where a dream had taken her, the men downstairs who seemed to overpower her despite her will. I hardly slept at night at all until I felt him out there. I knew he was near. But I am old, invisible. My years, they make me silent. So when he returned, he nearly kicked my bucket, nearly choked me right there on the spot. I sputtered, croaked, I know you more than anyone. I've learned the story isn't ever black or white. I tell them, though they never get it right. So there's a lot of myth here today, which makes me very happy. Hit or myth? Yes. And there's also a lot of wonderful student, teacher, mentor, friend poetry vibe that's just so lovely. So I'm going to read a poem dedicated to a woman who nearly broke my spine. Last time I read it in Rome a few months ago, she was still alive. People figured out who I was speaking of because I gave more hints. But now she's died. And so she died on that Tuesday after I read it on Friday. And I got all these ding dong, the witch is dead emails, which isn't very kind, but anyway. So the not very nice teacher poem that I'm going to read is called Arachne. It's a particular form, a triolet or triolet, however you spell it, that only has 2 rhyme sounds. But it's messed up because I got an extra line in there not knowing what I was doing. So it's un triolet sbagliato for a very mean professor. And you know the story about Arachne, right? Don't fuck with the goddess, they all said, but I was naive. I was really good, you know, not being immodest, but don't fuck with a goddess. Perceived as hubris and estro test of wills, it's the oddest thing I simply loved, yes, lived to weave. I wanted her to see what I'd achieved. I fucked with the goddess, and tangled in this tiny web, I grieve. Now, and this is a good teacher poem, and I wanted to read this because it was first published in the Hopkins Review under David Yezzi's reign, editorship, awesome time. And it's dedicated to my professor, the only professor I ever kind of used the M word about, mentor, that word, who was Cynthia McDonald, who was my professor at Columbia, but she also taught at the writing seminars at Hopkins. I'm sorry. In the 70s, I think. And she was a badass, she was awesome. She was an opera singer, she was a psychotherapist, and she was a really wicked poet who wrote a lot about really severe stuff. This poem is from Synesthesium. Thank you, David and Erica, for shepherding synesthesium into the world. And so half of that book is perfumey. And if anything sounds like it could be something you smell, even if it's weird, that is in this perfume that is called Lamp Black. It's a weird perfume, but it's nice. So, and this is for Cynthia, Lamp Black. A hurricane knocked out our power once. Those weeks I read by oil lamp, wrote till late, and dreamed of Mary Roth and Dickinson. The smoke curled up and left a smear of soot. She'd told me that the poets who were blocked are those who could not play as children, maimed. Too well I know you can't turn back the clock, ergo adulthood full of tricks and games, stilettos skipping down Manhattan's walks, no crack, no break, no back, encased in latex, that workadacious rubbery bouquet, the glitter of the night street glass in asphalt. Tonight the sky is black and pepper crisp. The moon has never seemed so spherical, blood orange or rufous grapefruit, which the eclipse dissevers, slice by slice, methodical. These come from manuscript pages because they're anagrams. They will be in the Furies, but how do you translate anagrams? You know, so the end words are anagrammed rather than rhymed. Damiano is convinced that I just wanted to write some poems that he couldn't possibly translate. And that's partly true. But the real other truth is that I started doing this during lockdown because I was saying earlier today, we were really locked down. I didn't leave my apartment for I don't know how many months. And to keep myself somewhat sane, yeah, I did Moira Rules Scrabble with my weird old German Scrabble board that I won in high school or something. And I would do Moira Rules. And so I was explaining the Moira Rules to my nieces and nephews at Christmas the other year. And they were like, oh, so basically you invented bananagrams. And I was like, what's bananagrams? So, but yeah, and then they gave me bananagrams a little bit later, so that was really nice. And so this series called Anagrams, I guess they are sort of tragic bananagram poems. I wanted to read this one in honor of Gary Blankenberg, who is known and loved by many people in the room. And the way these elegiac anagrams work is the real title is at the bottom of the poem, and there's an anagrammed title at the top of the poem. So the real title of this one is An Elegy for Dr. B, and the anagrammed title is O Brief Deranger. Today the wind blew in, boreal and truculent. No comfort, not in fine labor nor in love. Someone very dear has died, poet, friend, wildly read. He of silver beard prodigious, he who bared psyche, soul, confessional. He spilled the Stygian noises, flacken of the anima, a prized precision of despair. Cigar smoke wafts on air, bereft, he's left us here. In his death I relive all those my dearests, revile the damned dark dearth. Who is it snips the thread anyway? The one I'm named after? Myrrh, dark berry, bitter fate. And I wanted to say thank you, Joe, and it's so great to read with you. I've never read this poem, as far as I know, with someone who has a daughter named Moira, but obviously that's the one I'm named after. And it was great to hear your poems, by the way, so thank you. This one was a finalist in the Erskine J contest, and will be in the next issue of Smartish Pace, which isn't here. Damn it, Stefan. Well, and it will be fairly self-explanatory. It's so Gone Half My Life, and its anagrammed title is Fain Holy Flame. Intaglioed in my heart, broad-shouldered quasi-macho, bard of bastardry, of badassery, ever at the verge of his dear abyss, how he delighted in dreadness, metaphysical dark, this sad red senza, sensibility, fine wine and siren song. Who knows who holds the reins in a life anyway? Cloak blown about as if on moors, law, taboo unblocked. This is no fiction, no hyperbole, falling in slow-mo, noble Hyperion, always the ice-eyed wolf dog by his side. He left behind wife, cold eye cast, left behind children too, no glance back, no salt pillar, and no hit colder, the daughter who knows he must go, rue leapt clean o'er, memory the sweet rogue petal. 2-poem warning? Okay, I'll read one more anagram and then a very special poem with a really miraculous backstory. So as you may have heard or may have visited me, I live in Rome, and you can't be a poet in Rome and not have some sort of deep relationship with Keats, because we have his bones, whatever might be left there. And so this is basically, and I don't know how many times I've been to that amazing cemetery, and when I tell people it's my favorite place in Rome, well, and then they go and visit it and they understand. So this is kind of a general elegy to lots of dead people whom I love and miss and maybe didn't even know. And also this is the only time that it works, that the real title down at the bottom is At His Grave. But it works if I read it at the end too, so maybe I'll do that. So, and the anagrammed title is Ravage This. What to leave at his anathema grave, Mexican sugar coke, bitter agave, all the shoulds, woulds, coulds, gray, the negative capable clouds, subjunctive funk of weather, slide by, a grief-laid wreath on black granite, sharply carved the name, water-writ, craved fame, wisdom, wit, or whist, mentor, master of subtle torments. To him I raise this chalice, rim-dipped, sugar, salt, citrus. Chimerical, the blessed, boozy, bluesy moods, and all 9 muses bloody in his wake. Yet, eminence breeze, beloved sometimes, solely to verse obliged. Left so lonely, I can only listen, sitting cross-legged, silent, at his grave. Isn't it cool that silent and listen are anagrams? I think it's very cool. And the last poem, so last year, many miraculous things happened to me. I broke my knee. I met the Pope. I was in a wheelchair when I met the Pope. Damiano said, "Oh, lei poetessa," and the Pope looked down at me and said, "Ah, poetessa." And I was expecting that I was going to miraculously stand up and no longer have a broken knee. But no. The more miraculous thing, thank you, Dora, for having published this poem in the Hopkins Review and then having nominated it for the Best Spiritual Literature of 2024. And why is it that when I tell people that I have a poem in the Best Spiritual Literature of 2024, they go, "What, you?" And I say, yes, it's because I met the Pope. And I don't really want to explain very much, except I think that do we have any linguists in the room? So, you know how consonants and vowels have different names because they do different things in your mouth. And there's a particular kind of consonant called velar, velum, it has to do with that it comes through the membrane. And it can either be voiced or voiceless. You can either go g or k. And that's velar. And whether it's voiced or voiceless makes it a G or a K, for example. So that's my pedantic little linguistic note about this first part of the poem. It really happened, and I was so upset. And then it went on to something else. So, and I don't think I need to explain anything else. So it's called velar. She said that faith is her anchor, but I heard anger. Fragile, fraught faith, bells and beeswax candles, a baseless base, frankincense and myrrh, common sense thrown out the stained glass window. Those characters we studied in the minster windows, transluced as through a membrane, luteous. A medieval monk with spectacles round like vintage Eltons. Who knew that kind of vision was possible back then? Her son a suicide, impassable the life, ever unable to translate love from the cradle to where he was. Once I touched a page of vellum made of fetal calfskin, buttery, as they say in the trade, disruptive to the system's anger or anchor, both velar, one voiced, one voiceless.